Hi, 8th graders. I miss you. Can't wait to see you soon. Hope you're all having a great day. Today we're going to be taking our final notes on this unit. Told you it was a quick one on two-way tables. Remember that you are not going to be held accountable to this unit on your grade. It is still important skills to learn for PSAT, for NWEA, for high school, and it's a real-world connection of how you may use math in the future. So today, this is entry number 34 in your notebook. So you should already have your intro to two-way table notes from Wednesday. And then today we're going to be going ahead and gluing in our blue notes that say finding relative frequency at the top. So go ahead and glue in those blue notes. If you don't have these blue notes or you do not have a calculator, be sure to grab those things because this is a set of notes where a calculator is going to be very handy. We're going to be dealing with percents and fractions and decimals, and having a calculator to help you do some of those skills is going to be really helpful. So get that blue sheet glued into your notebook. Take care of your glue sticks, get a calculator. You will also need a whiteboard marker and eraser today as well. So go ahead and grab those materials so that you are ready. Once you have that in your notebook, make sure you have a pencil and that you are ready to go with our notes page. Give you just a second to gather those materials. Like I said, a calculator. You'll need a whiteboard marker and eraser for later as well. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So this skill is all about finding something called relative frequency. And relative, just like to you, a relative as a member in your family is somehow related to you. And so we're going to be talking about how these numbers are related to each other. And the word frequency is like how often it happens, right? So we're going to be comparing two numbers and putting those into a decimal, a percentage, or a fraction to communicate how those two things are related. So what is a relative frequency? Well, in 6th and 7th grade, and maybe even before that, you've talked a lot about probability. And so relative frequency is about the probability of an event, and it can be given in three different ways. It could be given first as a fraction, just as the part over the whole. We could put that fraction into our calculator and we would get a decimal. We could then multiply that decimal by 100 to get a percent. And this is relative to the total events in that category. Okay, so we're going to take the probability of this event relative to the total. Okay, so for example, if in this class I surveyed all of you and I asked you to identify as male or female, and then I asked you how many siblings do you have? Do you have 0 siblings? Do you have 1 to 2? Do you have 3 to 4? And maybe I'm going to ask of the males how many or what percent or what relative frequency had more than 4 siblings. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing, is taking and instead of just stating a number, we're going to be comparing two numbers. So a little bit harder or complex of a skill from just naming a number in the table. So the first step when we're trying to find relative frequency is to identify the whole. the question is asking about. Is it asking about males? Is it asking about females? Is it asking about sixth graders? Is it asking about all people surveyed? Okay, and we're gonna find that box in the table. The total comes after the word of. Okay, so if you're trying to figure out where is this total, I don't know what it's looking for. A cue to you would be to look for that word of and see what comes after it. They could be asking you for the whole total, like looking at the whole entire table. They could ask you for the total from a row going across, or they could ask you for a total in the column going up and down. Once we know the whole, we're going to then identify the part the question is asking about. Okay, and again, we'll find that box on the table. The last step is to write your answer as the part over the whole. It will look like a fraction. You could divide those to make a decimal, or multiply, that should say multiply, not multiple, multiply the decimal by 100 for a percent. And the reason we're giving you those is oftentimes these are multiple choice questions. And so we need you to be familiar with that a fraction could be a correct answer, a decimal could be a correct answer, or a percent could be a correct answer. So when we do these practices down below, we're going to write our answer as each of those. And that's a good tool to have in your notes. Okay, so here on the left-hand side, oh, we've got a little glitch there. Let's see if we can get that taken care of. Doesn't like that table there. Let's see if I close it out and try to reopen it. Are we happy? Yes, there we go. Thank you for your patience. Technology doesn't always work. So we're going to look at the table on the left and we're going to look at the table on the right, and then the questions go along that are underneath that. So the first question asks, what is the relative frequency of all people who prefer electronic books? Okay, so we're looking for all people because that's what comes after the word of. Okay, and I'm going to circle in our table, but know that we will have multiple circles in this box, and so we'll also write the numbers under the questions. Okay, so if we're looking for all people, this is why we talked about the last skill first, being able to answer questions. We know that there are 107 people, so I'm just going to write 107 underneath that. Okay, now we're continuing in all people. We're not going to jump up into the youth row. We're not going to jump up into the adult row. We're going to stay in that total row. Okay. Then it's asking about who prefer electronic books. So I look for electronic and I find that 63 people prefer electronic books. So my first thing as an acceptable answer, it may just be 63 over 107. And that may be an answer there. Those ones are always the easiest when it's just the fraction. Okay. Up next would be to divide those and to get a decimal. And I encouraged you to try it in your calculator because one of the hardest things of this unit is being able to round correctly. And so we want to make sure that we're practicing and following along in our calculator. If you look in your calculator, 63 divided by 107 is 0.58878. Okay, and we always like to do 2 decimal points, not just 1. So we would do 0.58. And then the question is, would it stay 0.58 or would it round up? And the answer is that next digit is an 8. That means it's greater than 5. So we would round up and we would get 0.59. If I then multiply that answer by 100, okay, so multiply by 100, I could also get that it is equal to the percent, which would be 59%. Okay, so we're just kind of losing that decimal and getting 59. Some people like to be a little more accurate and they could say 59.9, or 58.9, going one more decimal. Like if you look, it would be 58.87, so we would do 58.9, maybe being a little more accurate. Okay, I'm going to switch my color here for our next question. It says, what is the probability of people who prefer printed books? That's a long one. Of people who prefer printed books. So we need to go and we need to figure out how many people prefer printed books. Well, I find printed books. 24 youth preferred printed books. That's not what I want. 20 adults preferred printed books. That's not what I want. I want of people. Okay, so there would be my of people. So this would be 44. Now, staying in printed books, staying in that column there, we're looking at what is the probability of that group that likes printed books being adults. Okay, so I would look at that 20. Okay, being adults would be 20. A cue to you when we're doing this is whatever comes after of should be the biggest number that you're dividing. Okay, so for this one, I get 20 over 44. Those are my favorite, nice and simple, don't have to do any rounding or anything like that. When you do put it in your calculator, you get 0.454545. Some people do. You can put that repeating bar over it. We don't require it. I'm not going to mark your answer wrong because of it. We can just leave it as 0.45. If I then multiply that by 100 and get my percent, it would become 45%. And all of those would be acceptable answers. Okay? All right, let's try the last one here. Let me change my color once more. What fraction? Notice that each of these questions, here we say relative frequency. Here we say probability. Here we say fraction. They're all asking the same thing, okay? On this one that says fraction, we could probably stop at the fraction step because our answers are probably going to be in a fraction, okay? So what fraction of adults, so now we're looking for adults to be our total, okay? Not just adults who like printed books, not just the adults who liked electronic books, all the adults. So we have 50 total adults. And of those 50, how many preferred printed books? So I end up using this same box again, which would be 20. So I could stop at 20 over 50. Now, if you looked on a assessment or maybe on PSAT or NWEA, this answer may not be there because it can maybe be simplified. So if you put in your calculator 20 ABC 50, remember that ABC button right there, right below PRB. If we hit that and then we hit enter, this can simplify to 2/5, okay, to 2/5. I encourage you now to pause the video and try those next 3, and then maybe go through them a little bit quicker. I'm going to just kind of show you the answers quickly, not take as much time on these ones. Okay, so go ahead, pause the video. I'll see you in a second, and we'll go over those answers. All right, hopefully you've taken an opportunity to check over or try these ones, maybe with the people around you. I'm going to go over and show you the answer to these now. Okay, so for relative frequency of 8th graders who prefer comedy, you should have had 16 over 31. And 16 divided by 31 would be 0.5, and it should round to 5.2, which would be 52%. Next one, what is the probability of all students who prefer drama? There were 61 total students, and of all of the students, the 7th and 8th graders combined, 28 of them preferred drama. When I divide 28 by 61, I get 0.459, which means 46 is my decimal, or 46% of the students prefer drama. And finally, what fraction of 7th graders prefer comedy? So on this one, there were 17 out of the 30 who preferred comedy. I could probably just leave it as a fraction, seeing if it could be simplified. 17 is a prime number, so there is no simplifying here. All right, so that is your skill for today. We're going to do a whiteboard practice and get a little practice. I will be back on Monday, and we will practice this skill, and we will have our quiz next week on these 3 skills. Have a great day.